Hey, what is up everybody? Today we have a 2014 BMW 428i. Of course, this is an all-wheel drive model. This car was brought to us by First International Auto Group out of Merrimack, New Hampshire. I do a lot of their cars. Definitely feel free to check out their site. They're a fantastic dealership with a great group of people. All right, so before we get out on the road today, let's go check out the exterior of the car. So this is the 2-liter 4-cylinder model of the BMW 4 Series. And so obviously this is a bigger car than that 2 Series we drove, so it's going to be interesting to see how the extra weight and the extra size handles with the same engine. So this engine has 240 horsepower, 255 pound-feet of torque. The curb weight is just about 3,700 pounds in this 2-door car. So the side profile of this 4 Series remains the same basically from stock. We have these 5-spoke alloy rims, fairly good looking, nothing to complain about there. And then in the back of the car, it looks like they added a little duck lip spoiler. We have some interesting black, maybe looks like titanium exhaust tips. I haven't really noticed a sound difference from driving this car to the outlets here. But we also have this black badging, which I don't mind, but they also should have blacked out the XDrive or just taken it off. So looking into the trunk, we have rear folding seats, which you can appreciate, especially with a coupe, because you get that added access to the cabin. You could probably get a ladder in here, no problem. So this specific 2014 BMW 4 Series has just over 103,000 miles on it. So we're definitely going to mention if we have any sort of wear and tear, and just how this car is overall held up in its history of over 10 years. These BMW 4 Series started at just above $41,000 US, brand new. And of course, this one definitely has some added features, such as we have the sport package, and it looks like the cold weather package, because we have this heated steering wheel and these heated seats. So just like all of the BMWs from this era, we have these same available drive modes. We basically have Sport, Sport Plus, which turns traction control off, Comfort, which is basically your normal setting, and then Eco Pro. I am going to start off our drive in Sport. It's a very cold day here in New Hampshire, so I'm not gonna turn traction control off. So this 4 Series definitely has a good amount of pickup in it. You get the torque range fairly low, and of course it doesn't really have a lot of turbo lag to it either. And this engine is hooked up to a 8-speed automatic transmission. So far so good. The shifts are fairly smooth. So throwing this car into manual mode, you upshift by pulling down, and you downshift by pushing forward, which some people would argue is the proper way to do it, but I honestly prefer the opposite. I like to have my upshifts be forward and my downshifts be back, just because I'm so used to that in my Elantra N-Line that I owned. But we also have paddle shifters, so you don't even really have to worry about that. Your left one is downshift, your right one is upshift. But keep in mind, these are also wheel-mounted paddle shifters. And so the problem I have with wheel-mounted paddle shifters is when you're going around a turn and you're doing hand-over-hand turns, these paddles follow the wheel. They don't stay in one position, so if you have to hit an upshift or a downshift going around a turn, you're gonna have a bad time. As far as downshifts on the turns, actually fairly impressive, very responsive. I think this 8-speed automatic is quite a good time in manual mode. But switching it back into our automatic mode and switching this car into comfort, as you can see, the transmission really, kind of kills that power band. We end up going into a much lower gear, and just running at about 1500 RPMs. So now let's get into the comfort of this coupe. So of course this is supposed to be not necessarily an M sport car. It's really just supposed to be a luxurious coupe with a little bit of power so you can, you know, kind of have some fun driving while also ride around comfortably. So of course it's pretty quiet in here. I will say that some of the higher trim models definitely come with more sound deadening, but the ride overall is quite smooth, and the suspension is not entirely stiff, not too bad, not as bad as those M cars can be on these more rough roads. As far as available features, we have keyless entry and push button start, so feel free to leave that key fob in your pocket. We have dual zone climate control, which actually this car also has dual direction too, where you can adjust where the airflow goes on this side of the car and on this side of the car separately, which is nice because sometimes you have dual zone climate control, but you only can control how that air flows for the entire cabin rather than each side. And then really the only individual adjustments you have is of course that temperature. And so as I said before, we have a heated steering wheel and heated seats. I have both on, really taking advantage of the fact that this car has it in this 15 degrees Fahrenheit weather. Our heated steering wheel button actually hides just below kind of where the telescopic controls are for the steering wheel. It's a hidden button for a feature that people are really going to want here in New Hampshire, so I don't really appreciate them hiding that. But Porsche does that too. I just feel like if you have a feature in a car, Americans don't read manuals. Put it on the, you know, front of the infotainment screen so people know it's readily available for them. Another thing about controls is I've always hated the BMW turn signal. It's just incredibly difficult to use. It doesn't always snap back in a sense when you go around a turn and you have your directional on. It doesn't reset itself because it doesn't have a true set position. When you put on the turn signal, it already kind of bounces back to where it was before. And so how do I turn it off? Oh, let me just hit down, and then all of a sudden it puts on my left directional instead of my right. You kind of have to do a light tap up or down to get that directional to shut off without going on to the other directional. As far as the looks of this interior, I do really appreciate most of how this interior is designed. My one fault with it is I don't really like how the steering wheel is. I don't like the pebbled leather it has on, you know, where the horn would be. I do also think that they kind of have to get rid of the pebbled leather plasticky. Well, this is actually plastic. I feel like they should get rid of the pebbled plastic and leather and just go for a more gradient design. It kind of ages the car, and I think even back when these were new, it looked old. I do appreciate the fake wood paneling. I like that it's not gloss black. There is no gloss black in this car whatsoever, from what I can see, which is nice. So as I said before, this car is very stiff. Not as stiff as those M cars, but definitely has a hard time going over the worst road in Merrimack, New Hampshire. The larger bumps are quite jarring, though it kind of hides some of these smaller imperfections in the road. Regarding these seats, I appreciate the side bolstering. I feel like we also have a very nice driver's position. I get as much visibility as I can out of this large coupe with tiny windows. Alright, no one around us. Let's stop for a moment and check out the backup camera. So actually fairly high resolution for a car from 2014, and we also have little parking sensors which helps you get in those tight spots, especially if you were parallel parking. This 4 Series has over 103,000 miles on it. So you may ask, how has it held up? You know, what is the condition of the car? is there a lot of signs of wear and tear? And short answer is no. I do have some wear on my buttons, such as my parking button on my shifter, and then also the buttons on the left door card here are completely gone. They've just kind of faded off or rubbed off, and you don't know what they are until you press them and get familiar with the car. The seats themselves are very still well bolstered and put together. Definitely the person who owned this car was fairly skinny. You know, I feel like if I owned this car for 10 years, I would have definitely blown out the side bolstering of the seat. It would have given up on me after maybe 5 years. As far as steering goes, it definitely improves when you put it in sport mode, but I feel like in comfort, the steering is just a little too light for my liking. It definitely feels not entirely connected to the road in the car, but you still have a sense of where your wheels are at all times. I think if you're opting for better steering and in a BMW, you might want to get one of those G80 M3 or M4s with rear-wheel drive. I think that's really the sweet spot for steering, and that's as good as it's gonna get in a BMW. But so to conclude my thoughts on this BMW 428xi, this basically concludes that I've driven basically every sedan and coupe in the early, 2010 BMW lineup. I've driven the 2 Series, I've driven the 4 Series, I've driven quite a few 3 Series, and I've driven a 5 Series, but I have not reviewed one. As far as the 6 and the 7s, I have a 7 on the channel. I don't have a 6 on the channel, although I've ridden in one. And I still think my sweet spot for the BMW lineup would be that 3 Series that we drove. The BMW 340xi, I just thought that was a brilliant car. The 2016 was the first year for the B58 engine, and it really just pairs well with that 8-speed auto that was in that car. But this is still a lovely package. This car itself provides plenty of comfort for long road trips. You don't have a lot of space with the trunk, but you do have rear folding seats, so that has some added usability. The back seats themselves don't have a ton of room, but if you're a rather short person driving another short person, you could definitely fit an adult behind you. But with that being said, definitely check out this BMW 4 Series at First International Auto Group in Merrimack, New Hampshire. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Sign up for my membership if you'd like to support me further. And as always, thank you for watching my video. Bye-bye.